Welcome to another episode of PCN Life. I'm Julie Thompson.
And I'm Brian Sullivan.
On this episode of PCN Life, Plymouth Rock Kitchens teams up with Best Tile to talk about the art of selecting the best tile for your project on a new design corner.
We have Jo Radner on set to talk about the upcoming Northeast Storytelling Conference and Festival, and then gives us a sneak peek of her storytelling performance right here on set.
But we start tonight's show with the Jones River Watershed Association. Brian, this is an in-depth piece about the situation that's going on in the Silver Lake. Talk about that, because you did this story.
It's a big deal, and this, we could have done this story any year. We could have gone all the way back to the turn of the century, going into the 20th century to talk about this story. The people at the Jones River Watershed Association, they're a great resource for us. They always have great stories, but we usually see them in the springtime when they're doing like a herring count. Mm-hmm. It turns out they do a whole lot more during the year, and this is one of those stories. When it comes to Silver Lake, they've been kind of running around with their hair on fire for a long time about this, and things finally hit a boiling point this past fall. And for people who don't know, the water from Silver Lake is basically the main water source for the city of Brockton, and that's nothing unusual. I mean, if you look at, say, the Quabbin Reservoir, that's out in Western Mass, and that provides the water for Boston and so on and so forth. Right. So these aren't unusual things. But the difference between the two is Silver Lake is a glacial body of water, whereas the Quabbin Reservoir was man-made. Okay. Right? So out in Western Mass, they actually got rid of 4 towns to flood them and then create the Quabbin Reservoir. Silver Lake, whatever's there, that's what's there. And we go a little more in depth into this. So this story was really interesting, and I was able to kind of condense a very complex subject. Yeah, and then I trimmed it down to close to 5 minutes.
So let's take a look.
The Taunton River stretches 37 miles from the confluence of the Town River and Matfield River in Bridgewater and eventually ends in Mount Hope Bay, an arm of Narragansett Bay off of northern Rhode Island. The river twists through several towns in southeastern Massachusetts, including North Dighton, the location of the Aquaria desalination plant. The significance of this spot here is that it's 16 miles down the road from the city of Brockton, and since 2008, Brockton has had access to the water being churned out of this facility, but in that time has only used it sparingly. Meanwhile, the city has continued to pull millions of gallons of water per day from Silver Lake, as it has since it started doing so in 1904. Since 1964, water from Monpont Pond in Halifax and Hanson and Furnace Pond in Pembroke has been diverted to Silver Lake to keep up with Brockton's growing population. This served to raise tensions in the towns providing the water in the decades that followed. Those tensions reached a new tipping point in October of 2017 when unusually high numbers of dead fish started popping up at Silver Lake.
It was here that thousands of dead river herring were discovered in the water and along the shorelines, and this sounded the alarm bells for those in the environmental community for a number of reasons. One being the obvious, why were there so many dead fish in Brockton's water supply? Another being, if the herring hadn't made it here by way of the Jones River, how did they get here?
Since the Jones River hasn't been a vehicle for the herring in over a century due to lake drawdowns and dams, it stood to reason they made it in by way of Pembroke, possibly from Herring Brook to Furnace Pond and Oldham Pond, due to all of the hard work that's been done in recent years in restoring the river herring populations. The deaths of thousands of fish still remains a mystery, but should serve as a warning.
When we know that river herring are doing poorly, like they can't make it up a river or their populations are down, or thousands of them die on the shoreline of a lake, we know that there's something wrong in the environment, and that goes all the way to public health. And so to find fish like this dead on the shoreline of Brockton's primary drinking water supply raises concerns not just for the environment, but also for people's public health in Brockton.
On a broader scale, the fish can be viewed as indicators of the overall health of the entire ecosystem, as can the low water levels.
We had a drought in 2016 that really revealed some of these problems. And so when we look at all these indicators, what we're trying to do is be resilient for the future. And so for both people's drinking water, people's health, and the environment, and sharing those. And so we've been trying to come up with solutions where all those needs can be met. And we've put a lot of time and effort and money into studies that see how that can work. And there are ways to do it. And we've made our legislators aware of that. We've made the DEP and other public regulators aware of that. But it's difficult to make that political change. The petition we have, which you can find at jonesriver.org, is really just to show that there's a large body of people in the state and in the region that care about these things and want to urge our legislators and regulators to push for those solutions.
The petition makes the case that the dead fish are a sign of what they're calling water mismanagement by the city of Brockton. The hope is that it will force lawmakers' hands in finding a water solution for Brockton that doesn't involve Monpont Pond, Furnace Pond, or Silver Lake.
I think when people do hear about fish dead in their drinking water supply, they are concerned. When they do hear about dangerously low water levels, they are concerned about it. And they're hoping that their legislators and regulators are doing something about it for them, representing them. And that gets back to our petition to show that there's enough people that care, that those representatives of ours really need to do their job.
In Kingston, I'm Brian Sullivan, reporting for PCN Life.
We stop in now with our friends from Plymouth Rock Kitchens on a brand new design corner to talk tiles.
Hi, this is Jillian Gustafson, and I'm an assistant designer at Plymouth Rock Kitchens. Today we're going to be talking about tile for PCN's Life Design Corner. Tile selection is an important part of the design process. It really marries your selection of your cabinets and your countertops together and completes the project. So today we're here at Best Tile, where I'm going to introduce my colleague, Sarah Call, who's going to introduce us to some interesting design choices. Hello, my name is Sarah Call. I'm the showroom manager at Best Tile Plymouth. Today we're going to talk about selecting tile for your backsplash. It is important to bring your countertop and cabinet selection with you at your first design appointment. As you can see, there are many possibilities available to you, and it will help narrow down those options. A popular design right now is a standard classic 3x6 subway. This is available in multiple sizes. It creates a classic simple look. Depending on your particular project, there may be other options available to you as far as a possible crackle, a textured tile in a larger size, glass tile, also available in multiple sizes, and a frosted glass tile. If the subway is not for you, there are many other available options to you. You could do an accent that runs through a subway. You could also put an accent all over the entire backsplash and use that. You could also mix some other options with some textures, border the accent with a liner, and then have a feature above a stove. Another option available to you would be bringing in a feature above a stove. If you have that space available to you, it's a good way to bring in some sort of theme or possibly a pop of color. You could always add a chair rail and border the material. It's a really good way of giving the kitchen an overall pop. Thanks for watching PCN Life Design Corner. I'm Jillian with Plymouth Rock Kitchens, and we'll see you next time.
We are so very pleased to have on set today Jo Radner. Welcome, Jo.
Thank you.
You are a storyteller. You are a folklorist. You are a woman of many talents. Tell us about storytelling, about your organization, about the event you have coming up, and storytelling in general.
Well, in a word, it's terrific. No.
Yep.
I want to say that I'm here. You've brought me here because there's something about to happen in Plymouth. Mm-hmm. And I'm the chair of the committee that's planning this wonderful conference and festival.
Okay.
March 23rd to 25th. It's called Sharing the Fire, Northeast Storytelling Conference and Festival.
Okay. What will I find if I go there?
Oh, both of those things. A conference, so workshops that teach people everything from how to begin as a storyteller to how to tell stories in prisons to how to use music and movement and so on. Mm-hmm. And also stories. Mm-hmm. We have a whole thread of things going alongside the workshops that are called Stories Galore. And at every moment in the conference, if you don't want to do a workshop, you can go to a story.
Okay. Now, how you got into this is kind of fascinating. You were a professor at the American University in Washington, D.C. for over 30 years, and you taught storytelling and folklore and women's studies and literature. And what about that gave you this passion for storytelling and to get other people involved in storytelling?
I think I had a revelation one day. I was a Celticist. I had a PhD from Harvard in early Celtic languages and literatures. And I was a young graduate student, and I was teaching a course called The Function of Literature in Early Celtic Society. And you had to be really sharp to take that course. And I was giving them everything, the whole load of hay. And then a friend of mine called me up and said, I have a friend named J.O. Callahan. This was in the early 70s, before J.O. Callahan was the most famous storyteller in the nation. And he has this idea that storytelling could be a performance art and all over the world. And would you like to meet him? He's coming to Washington. So I said, sure, I could indulge that kind of fantasy. And we had lunch, and I told Jay about a Ghanaian storyteller I had just heard tell a story, and he said, you're a storyteller. And that hadn't occurred to me.
Oh, you're right, I am.
And then he went to my class,
Yeah.
a class of very serious young people,
Yeah.
and he told them a story called The Little Dragon, which he had just made up for his children. And I watched these serious students who were taking, used to taking notes, just sit there and go into a trance.
Yeah.
And be completely overcome by the power of being taken into a story by someone else.
Right.
From then on,
That was
I
it.
told stories in my classes. I had great attention.
Yeah.
I
People
realized
learn better too, don't they?
Yeah.
If they're hearing a story versus a lecture?
not only better, but for 200,000 years, as far as we can tell, people have been on the planet telling stories.
Yeah.
And that's been the primary educational device. We are hardwired. Do you know how long we've been literate as a people, as a
Not
species?
specifically.
Maybe a couple hundred years.
Yeah.
And set that against 200,000.
Of
And our brains have
communicating.
actually learned to learn through storytelling more than any other way.
Now, nowadays, in this day and age, where everything is on your phone and it's on your tablet and it's on the TV and it's at the movies and once in a while it's on a book, but usually it's on a Nook, what has happened to just the face-to-face tell me a story?
What's happened is it's come back.
Okay.
It has come back enormously. For the past 40-odd years, there's been a growing storytelling movement in the country. And we've seen it over the last decade with the Moth Story Hour and StoryCorps. And now, even close to here in Boston, WGBH has Mass Mouth, has stories from the stage.
And there's story slams that I
And
know we do here in
stories.
Plymouth and
You
other
do.
places. Yeah.
You do here, and there are a lot of things like that. All of a sudden, people are realizing that screen to screen is not the only way to relate.
Right.
There's something really different. If I look at you and I say, let me tell you a story about something that happened to me, you're right there.
Right.
And not only are you right there, but, well, on my car I have a bumper sticker that says, the shortest distance between two people is a story.
Yeah.
And that's really true.
Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah.
We live in a world where we have so many differences.
Yeah.
And lately it seems as if prejudices and boundaries have gotten stiffer and stiffer.
Yes.
But a story will go right over that. and
Right. The
put you
story's
together.
gray when the world seems to be black and white. And
That's
it,
right.
Yeah, and it brings
That's
the grays
right.
into everything.
So it's coming back. We found every day there's a new event or a new group in New England. Northeast Storytelling, our organization, covers all the New England states plus New York. And we did a survey last year to see who was doing storytelling in that area. And there are hundreds of
That are.
little gatherings
Yeah.
that are regular
Yeah.
and groups. On our website, northeaststorytelling.org, there's a place where you can find a local group, and there are just dozens and dozens.
Right. Now, at your conference, I know one of the things that you can go to is about family storytelling. That's probably talk about a lost art. Families don't even eat together anymore. Forget about telling stories. So what is that all about?
It's going to be a great program. We're calling it The Nest. That's Northeast Storytelling. The Nest Fest.
Okay.
It's Sunday afternoon, the 25th,
Yeah.
for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And we've got a bunch of professional storytellers who are going to take turns telling little tiny stories from their lives, folk tales, and it's for families, elementary and middle school kids and their parents or significant adults. And we're going to tell stories, and then we're going to say it's your turn and teach the families of the groups in the audience to tell themselves stories. And if some of them want to, they can come up on stage and they can tell the stories that they've just discovered.
Even just bringing up the subject and having people think about it is a big step, because you just don't. In the daily life, you don't think about telling a story. And the fact that you do it in front of people and have that audience reaction, I know when I've been in plays in theater, you practice in front of nobody, but then when you actually are in the play and you have the audience there and you feed off them and they feed off you, it's a give and take like nothing else. So you must feel that way when you tell a story.
More so. Story doesn't exist without a listener. I can practice, I can tell it to my toes or to a dog or something, but it isn't the same thing, because storytellers are different from actors. They have to do all the characters, so they are actors. But they're also the director, and they're also the narrator, and they're also all the props. My job as a storyteller is to put a picture and a scene and all in your head. And I can't do that unless I'm talking right to you. So there are times when I'm telling a story and I'm saying such and such happened, and then I'll go right into the story and I'll say, and she said, I don't believe that for a minute. And he said, yes, you do. I don't. And then I come back and I say, well, you know, they fought for a long time.
So
I break that fourth wall all the time.
That's so cool. So you're going to actually do this for us. We are so excited. You're going to tell a story here for us on set. And it's about your first date?
It is. It is about my first date. You might consider it a historical story at this point, you know. 7th grade was a long time ago, but some things change and some things don't. And that's true with all storytelling. We've got a whole program, you know, at the conference of Plymouth Stories that's free to Plymouth residents. Saturday, called Plymouth Perspectives.
Wonderful. So if you go to the website, northeaststorytelling.org, you can get the whole rundown of what's going to go on at the conference.
And a slam.
But we want to see you. So we're going to cut to having you go do this for us right now.
Well, all right.
All right.
Hi, I'm Jo Radner, and the story that I'm going to tell you is called Eyebrows. When I was in 7th grade, which was a while ago, all the girls were in love with Clay Davis on account of his extraordinary eyebrows. He had wavy blonde hair combed back, and then these dark, bushy eyebrows that framed eyes that were as blue as the Caribbean, and if you looked into them, you could drown. I never looked. I was new in town. I was new in the school. I was new in a school that had boys. I had no idea what all the popular girls were giggling and chattering about on the playground. In my spare time, I walked in the woods and I studied salamanders. In fact, everything I knew about sex at that time, I learned from salamanders. But it turned out that in 7th grade, in my school, the boys and the girls didn't pay much attention to each other, except Wednesday nights. Every Wednesday night, every 7th grade mother drove her son or her daughter to the elementary school for Mr. Richards' ballroom dancing class. That's how long ago it was. It was always the same. In the gym, the boys would be sitting on a row of folding chairs on one side and the girls on the other. Down at the end would be Mr. Richards' deadpan piano player. And in the middle, the man himself, suave in black, with twinkling patent leather shoes. He would demonstrate a step. And then he'd choose one of the girls to demonstrate it with him. He never picked me. He usually picked Judy Mason. And I always thought that was really funny because she was only about half as tall as he was. But he just bent down and they twinkled together. And then it was our turn. At a signal, the boys rose up in a phalanx and they walked straight across the gym. You had to invite the girl right opposite you. We all got partners, and we made the best of it. Well, I was beginning to think that I could handle 7th grade. And then in January, the class mothers announced we were going to have our very first social dance. But it was a leap year, so they explained it would be a Sadie Hawkins dance and the girls would invite the boys. Fine. I didn't have to invite anybody. I didn't have to go. I was calm for weeks. The girls giggling. I wasn't troubled until the Tuesday before the Saturday of the dance, when all of a sudden at recess I was surrounded by a platoon of the most popular girls. Hi! Hi? We hear you haven't invited anybody to the dance. We think you should invite Clay Davis because he likes you. Clay Davis has never said 2 words to me. That's because he likes you. I saw through them. None of them had had the courage to invite him, and I was their last hope that he could come. But I wanted them to like me, so I said yes. And that night, when I made the most terrible phone call of my whole life and invited him, there was a long silence. I could imagine those eyebrows knotting. And then he said, "Thank you, I'd like to go. My mother and I will pick you up at 7 o'clock. At 7 o'clock on Saturday, I was ready. I was wearing my new poodle skirt. It was felt with yarn poodles embroidered on it. Clay came in, he helped me on with my coat. We got in the car, in the back seat, and his mother talked to us all the way to the school. When we went in, it was something the same. The boys all sat on one side and the girls all sat on the other. But it was different. There were balloons, and no Mr. Richards, and no piano player. There was a record player. We were going to have real music. Well, now the first dance was a waltz. You're supposed to dance the first dance with your date. So those blue eyes came right across the gym to me, and we danced. And then, of course, we went back to our sides. The next dance was a tango, my favorite. And those blue eyes came across at me once more, and then they veered off, and he invited Judy Mason. That happened a lot that night. They even won the Lindy Hop contest while I sat there combing the poodles on my skirt. We danced the last dance together. You're supposed to. It was another waltz. And then Clay helped me on with my coat, and we went out and got in the car, and Mrs. Davis said, "How was the dance?" "Wonderful, wonderful." We got home. I went in the house, and my mother said, "How was the dance?" "Wonderful." "Oh, I'm so relieved. You know, you're more than a foot taller than Clay Davis. When he went to help you on with your coat, I almost brought him a stepladder." I didn't laugh. I wasn't thinking anything was funny. I didn't want to think about how Clay and I would have looked dancing together. I didn't want to realize that Judy Mason was the only girl in 7th grade who was shorter than Clay Davis. I just wanted to go to my room and hibernate like a salamander.
Storytelling, face-to-face, people-to-people, reactions. It's such a cool concept, and we're losing it. I'm so glad we did that.
Yeah, that was great. What a wonderful guest. If you're interested in attending the Northeast Storytelling Conference and Festival, it's going to be held on March 23rd through the 25th at the Hotel 1620 right here in Plymouth, and you can visit nestorytelling.org for more information.
Well, that's a wrap. Thanks so much for watching PCN Life. You can rewatch this episode or any episode on our PCN YouTube channel. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at PCN Life for behind-the-scenes pics and info.
We'll see you soon.